What's up, guys? My name is Josh. Welcome back to episode number 10 of FAB 201. Glad to have you guys back. Today we're going to be talking about navigating the endgame, one of the most important topics, in my opinion, for improving as a player, and a particular area that I think everybody can learn a few things, whether they're starting out or they're more advanced. So today we're going to be exploring key endgame concepts with a couple of gameplay examples to illustrate what I'm talking about. So let's just jump right into it. So mastery of the endgame is crucial to becoming a top level player. As I said in the introduction, I think this is perhaps the most important area where you can differentiate yourself as a player. And this is an area where you can get a lot of advantage from proper tactics and maneuvering of the end game. Now, obviously the early game and mid game are important. Often they set up a easy end game. However, against equally skilled opponents, or even more skilled opponents, your end game skills are really going to be important. So why is the end game so important? Well, in the end game, your options are often restricted a bit, and mistakes are oftentimes game ending. If you block incorrectly, if you don't take a opportunity when it comes, if you've used your equipment in an improper manner, these things are all immediately game losing. And this is one of the easier areas to improve on, in my opinion, because you can often see directly the cause and effect. Oftentimes victory often happens several turns before you actually win, but sometimes in the late game you literally just block wrong and you lose, or you don't prepare your arsenal properly and you just can't get a 2 or 3 card combo going, something like that, right? Like I said earlier, end games are often very close, especially between equally skilled opponents. And the closer the end game, obviously, the less room for error there is. All right. I have a picture here of those of you who are familiar with chess will know who this man is. This is Magnus Carlsen, the current world champion. He's been world champion for the last 5 or 6 years, I believe. And he is known for being on another level, especially his endgame tactics and positional maneuvering is just on another level. People have said many times that he can create water from a stone, right? Oftentimes there are positions that look drawn and he's able to eke out an advantage, and that is really important for getting an advantage in chess. This also Likewise, it's also very important in Flesh and Blood. If your end game is sharp, you're just going to win more games. And I think every top level player, it has a very strong command of the end game. The final point here I wanted to talk about is that you need to do more with less. So what do I mean by this? In the end game, you've often used your equipment. You've often used multiple cards. For example, maybe you've run out of Blood Rush Bellow. Maybe you've run out of Warrior's Valor Red. Maybe you've already executed your combo and now you need some way to close the game. So this is also where you get into situations that are a bit more unique, right? So in the end game, one of the most important things is being able to analyze what resources you have at your disposal, what resources your opponent has at their disposal. And like I said many times, you need to keep in mind how you intend to win at all times, and how does your opponent intend to win at all times, and how do those two things interact to make the proper decisions. All right, so let's move on. So my philosophy when I talk about the end game can be summed up as respect all, fear none. So what does that mean? Well, oftentimes in the end game, I see players that are playing to not lose. Now, this is being too careful often means you don't, sometimes you just straight up miss opportunities where you can win, or you aren't taking, or you're trying to be 100% certain of victory when either that's not possible, or given the game state, that's not a realistic path to victory, right? So you should always be playing to win, not to not lose, right? Here I talk about 80 and 90% consistency. This is something I mentioned in the, I believe it was episode 4, when I talked about the mathematics of FAB. If you're interested in that, you can go watch that one. So in episode number 4, I talked about how if a play is going to be disastrous if it doesn't work out, I want it to be 90% consistent. If it doesn't really matter if it goes wrong, I want it to be about 80% consistent. So this applies to deck building with like maybe how many blues you're running, but this also applies to plays that you make in the game, right? Obviously, sometimes you're going to have to make plays where you might only have like 50% consistency, but obviously you should try to avoid that, right? So another thing that you need to be doing is you need to play to your opponent's level. Now, over the course of a classic constructed game, if you're playing even if you're playing a very, very quick deck, you'll get to notice some tendencies of your opponent, especially if you've played them before. You'll have a very good understanding of just what level of thinking they're at, right? And how well do they understand your deck. This is particularly important for classes that rely on attack reactions and those that play in a wide pattern, because certain lines of play, so more straightforward classes, there's really only one line of play, right? But for classes that attack in a wide pattern and those with attack reactions, there are often multiple lines of play available to you, and certain plays are only going to work against certain people. And this is why understanding the level at which your opponent is playing is really important. That dictates what type of risks you can take, what type of information you can give to them, and you can predict what they're going to do with that information, right? Okay, so let's move on. We've talked a little bit about the end game, so let's move on to some examples with gameplay. And the first one up, we're going to be looking at a game between Lexi and Prism. So let's just jump right into that now.
All right.
So Tunic to 3. Thank God it's not a Shivers of Silver.
All right. So as you can see, we have a game between Lexi and Prism. This game is actually between Seb and Tyler. These guys, this is actually a rematch of the Las Vegas Calling 2021 Grand Finals. So both these players are very high level players. So that's just something to keep in mind moving forward. All right. So let's just talk a little bit about the game state at the moment. So currently it's 3-3. It is Tyler's turn. Tyler used his whole hand to block and is swinging with one of his auras. So speaking of auras, he has 4 currently on the board. He has a Merciful Retribution, a Parable of Humility, a Pierce Reality, and a Passing Mirage. In addition to that, he has a Crown of Reflection. So he is currently swinging with one of his auras, and he's about to pop his Crown of Reflection and put Seb at 1.
Shimmers of Silver would be insane.
Ooh, this is close.
Yep.
Oh, he's destroyed. Yep, I knew that was coming. I think this game's over.
Yep. I didn't want to say it in case Sebastian was anybody.
So the Crown of Reflection there destroys an aura, which causes Merciful Retribution to trigger because an aura was destroyed, dealing an extra damage there. So the aura dealt 1, Merciful Retribution dealt 1, putting Seb at 1. So now with Merciful Retribution still on the field, and given the fact that Tyler has multiple cards in his soul, the commentators say that the game is over because all Tyler has to do is get a Spectral Shield to pop. And if he does that, the arcane damage from Merciful Retribution will kill Seb.
I was hearing, but I've been reading the card multiple times, thinking of when the right time of him is to play it, and literally that all he has to do is just make a shield, and he wins the game.
All right, so let's talk a little bit about what Seb is working with this turn and what Tyler has for defense. All right, so Seb currently has a revealed blue lightning surge, which has a base power of 2, but it gets reduced by Merciful Retribution down to 1. He has a hidden Rain Razors in Arsenal, courtesy of the New Horizons headpiece that gives him access to an additional arsenal slot. In his hand, he has a yellow Bolt and Shot, a red Battering Bolt, a blue Electrify to pay for things this turn, as well as Art of War. Over on Tyler's side, he has a Shimmers of Silver, which blocks for 2, and then he has 3 yellow Heralds, Herald of Triumph, Herald of Rebirth, and War Tune Herald, all of which block for 3. So there are multiple ways that Tyler can win this game. But in essence, all he has to do is create a shield and not die from the damage. He has to not die from the damage and get a shield to pop. That's Tyler's path to victory. Seb's path to victory here is he has to given his current hand, the only way for him to win is to Art of War into another Rain Razors or Lightning Press or Razor Reflex. Now, I believe that this is actually very, very late game here, so I don't think he has access to Lightning Press anymore. However, he still has access to Razor Reflex, which we will see matters quite a bit this turn in terms of how Tyler blocks. So let's see what Seb does first.
I don't think he has any other damage prevention in the deck, does he?
He does not.
Well, make him do it at least.
Yep, there he is.
All right, so Seb decides to play the blue Lightning Surge from Arsenal. This comes across for 1. Okay, so this is a kind of a complicated situation here, given the fact that Tyler's at 3. Okay, so from Tyler's perspective here, if he decides to no block, he dies to Razor Reflex. He dies to Lightning Press, which I believe Seb doesn't have any more copies of. So he basically dies to Razor Reflex here. Okay, so given the fact that he could die to a pump, even if he makes a shield, he has to either throw a Herald or Shimmers of Silver in front of this attack, or he has to throw Tunic in front of it. So let's run through those 2 options. Okay, so let's say he throws a card from his hand in front of this. So if he throws the Shimmers of Silver down, it'll block for 2. So if Seb has Razor Reflex, that'll go to 4 against 2. So obviously Seb would not play his Razor Reflex. Okay. If he blocks with the Herald, same thing. He will be blocking 4 against 3. So again, Seb would obviously not play the Razor Reflex there, right? Because both of those situations allow Tyler to create a Spectral Shield and kill him, right? If Tyler puts out the Tunic, blocking 1 against 1, and Seb has Razor Reflex, he can make a shield. So obviously, again, Seb will not play Razor Reflex, okay? The only time he would play Razor Reflex is if he had Razor Reflex and Art of War, or double Razor Reflex, all right? So given the fact that his 2 options are basically block with a card from hand or block with Tunic, obviously it makes more sense to block with the Tunic, because this is like the ultra late game, so we're very, very, very unlikely to get to a second cycle of the deck. All right. So Tyler blocks with the tunic.
Green Razors doesn't work on.
Nope.
Wait. So if Tyler has. Wait. Because Parable makes this the lightning surge a 1.
Yeah.
So he's blocking.
So maybe actually, if I'm not mistaken, doesn't I think if he goes high enough, he wins.
So as the commentator pointed out there, if Seb can go high enough, he can win. If Tyler doesn't have enough block, or if he has enough instance or attack reactions to pump an attack over.
He has to go high enough, right?
Yes, but if Tyler has any free blocks in his hand,
I mean, he probably does. You know.
Okay, so Seb draws into Bolt and Shot and Rain Razors. So now he actually has 4 extra damage here at instant speed. So he has a path to victory. However, he has to get Tyler to do a few things in particular.
we need Tyler to not have 2-3 blocks in his hand, basically.
Yeah.
Oh, that's a battering bolt, Kyle.
He has one.
That's 8 damage. That means Tyler has to have 3 blocks in his hand now, I think. Hold on.
All right, so Seb loads the battering bolt into the Voltaire, crucially giving it go again. Not +1, giving it go again. There's several reasons for that. Let's discuss them right now. First of all, if he gives the attack +1, that'll bring the attack from 6 to 7. Art of War will bring it to 8. Parable of Humility will bring it down to 7. So if the attack is coming across for 7, given what Seb has in his hand, he really needs Tyler to block exactly 7. If Tyler blocks for 8, Seb will lose. Okay, so he has to induce an Exacxes block. And coming across for 7 means the opponent has to have 2 blocks and a 3 block, which is not as likely as if you attack for 6 and the opponent just needs to have 2-3 blocks. All right. Not only that, but giving the attack go again indicates to Tyler that another attack is coming. Right? Given the fact that there's 1 resource floating and 2 cards. So from his perspective, there's a 0 cost arrow coming, and he's going to have to save his floating resource for the footsteps and one of his cards to make a shield to make an or to take a little bit of damage and kill Seb, right? That's what Tyler is most likely thinking at this moment. It is extremely important that he gave this attack go again. I cannot overemphasize it, and it is actually a very, very brilliant play. And yeah, let's just go back to the game.
Hold on.
Wait.
He can only make 1 shield, so this
There's
is 6,
no way.
Then 8, 9, -1 for the parable. That's 8. Hold on. If he has another buff in his hand.
Yeah, like I was saying,
he could have given +1 from the Voltaire as well, so that'd be 9, right? 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, -1, 9. Yeah, I believe 9.
So here the commentators do math a little bit incorrectly because they don't realize that Seb has chosen to give the attack go again instead of +1.
So there is a possible way that he wins this game still.
Yeah, I think. Even the shield's not going to kill him as long as the lethal damage.
Yeah, he just has to deal the damage first. If he sees 2 auras here, he loses.
And I don't think the battering bolt allows him to use like defense reactions. They reveal their hand when battering bolt hits. Oh, okay, never mind.
Wow.
It's a different card I'm thinking of, but
Randy, the players right now are Sebastian Cavallo and Tyler Horspool. Got a rematch from Las Vegas finals in September.
I feel like one of those like soccer announcers. No, 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 no.
No, 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 no.
Like, there's no reason for Tyler to be taking this long with this block if he's not dead, right?
What if, I mean, like, right? So he's got one floating. Okay, let's think about this. He's got one floating. He could have a soul shield.
He has to pitch another card.
He might have a soul shield. That's what he's probably thinking about.
If he has a soul shield, it's over.
Remember that this attack is coming in for 6.
That's what I'm saying, right? Like, so he's blocking 3.
6. Oh, he has the 3 blocks. So Rain Razors. Oh no, he's got a second Rain Razors.
No, he's got double Rain Razors. There's no way.
6, 7. That's 11.
It's not 11, it's 10. But 10 here against a block of 6 means there's no way for him to win. Remember how I said earlier that if he blocks 6, he loses? And so Seb needed to get him to block 6? Here you go.
Sebastian!
Unless he has a defense reaction, it's over. Because he didn't block with the footsteps.
I'm so confused. But yeah, I'm so hype all at the same time.
Oh, Tyler said he lost.
Really?
Yeah, I just asked in chat if there was an issue, and he said, no, I lost.
A very, very, very beautiful play there. And a play that a line that may not have worked on a weaker player, but Seb played this very beautifully, and he got water from a stone. Well played.
Oh my God, Sebastian.
All right. So after taking a look at that game, we could take a few things away from it. The first is that hand reading late game is critical, right? Understanding what could be coming, like Razor Reflex or Rain Razors, is really, really critical. Also, understanding the amount of block that your opponent is likely to have is also very important. We saw that equipment usage was very, very critical. We saw the crown being broken, and we also saw the lack of footsteps being put out there as well. And the last point I want to talk about is forcing your opponent to do something is often the strongest play you can make. This is something that I talked about in episode 1, actually. Late principles of late game is that if you can force your opponent to make a play, you can design around them making that play. So this is talking about on their defense. If you can predict how they're going to defend or what they're going to have to respect, if you understand what level of your level your opponent is at, you can calculate a possible path to victory, which is what Seb did in the game. He found one of the few lines that led him to victory, and he played it well. All right, so let's move on to another example between. It was actually myself playing Dorinthea against a Reinhardt player, control Reinhardt. So let's just take a look at the game footage right now.
Unless you remember his pitch stack, then you can find one turn to block.
He shuffled with singing Stillblade, so
yeah. So he need to start to remember.
Right.
All right, so let's just pause the game right now and let me talk a little bit about the game state and how we got here. So a couple turns ago, I was actually down 1-12, but I've managed to chip away at my opponent's life and get him down to 3. However, currently, to get to this point, I used all my armor, and I made a lot of tempo plays, and currently I have no arsenal as well. So currently I have no D-Reacts left in my deck, so each time this club comes across, I have to block with 2 cards. And given that I only have 2 cards, there are very, very few ways for me to kill my opponent at 3. All right. So actually, if you have time, I recommend you watch this game. It's actually very, very good. But at one point, I was down 1-12. And given that, there was basically only one path to victory, considering I don't have Dominate in my deck except for Nourishing Emptiness. The only way for me to win was to chip him down and play Nourishing Emptiness. In order to do that, I'd have to, 1, stay alive. 2, I'd have to maintain tempo such that he could only present a club swing at me. And 3, I'd have to draw Nourishing Emptiness in time, right? So that's the state of the game right now. He has no armor. I have no armor. Every single time he swings with his club, it's coming across for 2 cards. My opponent has overblocked quite a bit, and we've gone through the deck several times at this point, so I'm very confident he has no more copies of Reckless Swing. He played 1 earlier in the game, and we never saw a second copy, and now I'm very confident that he no longer has Reckless Swing to kill me. So his path to victory is to keep swinging the club until he finds a hand that either you heard the commentators talking earlier about pitch tracking. If he's confident I don't have a pump in my hand, then he can block exact. Or if he knows I have a small pump in hand, he can block exact and take a damage or 2. Alternatively, he could find a hand that would get 3 cards out of my hand. If he can ever get 3 cards out of my hand, I'd probably lose. So club's coming across now. I have to give him 2 cards here. Given that Glistening Steelblade does not give the weapon a buff, and Alpha Blood Blue is not good enough, and Energy Potion does not block, I have to give him the Glistening and Out for Blood, which is what I do. So let's go back to the game.
Yeah, and
There's 2 cards.
And the remaining cards should be red or should be yellow or blue in Joshua deck.
Okay, so you heard the commentator there talk about how, in terms of deck quality, I probably only have yellows and blues left in my deck. You will see Jack check my graveyard soon to calculate his block. And I basically have I basically have 2 +3 pumps left in my deck, and I have about 18-ish cards left. Okay, so here with the E-Plot and Steelblade Supremacy, obviously I'm not going to play Steelblade Supremacy here, because if I play Steelblade Supremacy and swing at Dawnblade, he's going to block with 1 card, and then he's going to come back at me with 3 cards. So he's going to take 2 damage, go down to 1, and a 3-card hand from my opponent is very likely to get 3 cards from me, and from there I just die. So yeah, so there's only one play here. It's to pitch the Energy Potion and bluff that I have a attack react.
All right, we'll see a naked Downblade at least.
Yeah, and Joshua still have 1 energy potion in his deck. So that would be a bad news.
No, there it is. Block.
All right, so as I said before, I'm just going to pitch the E-Pot swing Dawnblade for 3. So from my opponent's perspective, so a little bit of more context here. My opponent has been put in this situation several times. I have seen his tendencies, and I know my opponent very, very well. I've played many, many, many games with my opponent. Especially I've played this matchup, especially in Blitz. I've played many, many times with him. So I know his tendencies. I also know that he has no more Fate for Scenes in his deck, and I'm very certain he has no more Reckless Swings left in his deck. So given that my opponent does not have a D-React, and the fact that I could have a +3 pump, I know that my opponent, if he's playing safe, which I know he is a player that likes to play safe, he's going to give me 2 cards. Now, as we can see by his hand, if he gives me 1 card, he is able to keep the blue and play Alpha Rampage, discarding a card, which would be a double Intimidate, and coming across for 9, that would kill me for sure, considering I have no D-Reacts left, right? So here my opponent has to make a choice. Do they give me 1 card and gamble that I don't have an attack react? Or do they give me 2 cards, swing the club, Arsenal, Alpha Rampage? Those are the 2 choices right now.
6, call it a day.
Yeah.
I mean, if he could block 1 here and get away with it, it's like, well, like he needs the security of a D-React, right? If he has a D-React in hand, it's easy. You just block 3, and then like you present like an attack for, another club, and then you arsenal that D-React. Now you do the exact same thing, only blocking 1 card, and when you have that safety of the D-React, you just, it's night and day. But Jack's running out of cards, right? Like he can't keep respecting. He's got 9 cards in deck, and Josh has 17. So,
So as the commentator pointed out there, because my opponent has been overblocking because he ran out of D-Reacts, his deck is actually getting thin. So at some point, you just have to take a risk. Now, ideally, you take a risk where you don't immediately lose the game. Like if he took a risk when he was at a higher HP, if he drew this hand at 4 HP, this is an easy single card block, right? But the fact that he's at 3 means that he has to take a risk here, right? So every single point of health matters here, as you can see.
Don't know how many times you can overblock.
It's either this turn or the next turn, but
Right.
Jack.
I think
I'm sorry.
you need to only block 1 card. And
Right.
yeah, right now maybe it's the best to do.
Yeah, he was just looking through Josh's graveyard to see if he can get away with 1 block.
Right.
Oh, no.
Yeah, okay. He said next turn is the turn.
All right, so my opponent takes the safe route and puts 2 cards in front of it. Obviously, I'm very happy with that. I get to live another turn.
Blue Wrecker Romp comes in for 6, so effectively 6 is no different than coming in for 4, because it's just 2 cards in Warrior.
So here I draw into my win condition, Nourishing Emptiness. I don't have any attack actions in my graveyard, so I just give him 2 cards here, play Nourishing, and that'll be the win.
Does keep a card. If that's a D-React, which is highly unlikely, but maybe it's like a big attack. I don't know. Because now it's going to be a lot harder to gamble on a 1-card block when Josh has 2 hidden cards instead of 1.
So as the commentator rightly pointed out, the situation just gets worse now, because when I have an Arsenal card, the amount of possibilities for a 3-card hand is much, much higher in Dorinthea and in general for any hero, right? So he basically, the last turn cycle allowed me to get an Arsenal and him to get an Arsenal. However, I get to take advantage of the fact that I have an Arsenal first, right? So now that Jack has Alpha Rampage in the Arsenal, he's actually guaranteed to win as long as he survives this turn. But unfortunately,
Ooh.
No!
Uh-oh.
Got him!
What?
Got him! No!
Oh, that's the
coming.
thing.
That's why we play Flesh and Blood.
Oh,
That is why we
boy.
do it. Holy cow. We counted Josh out.
Yeah.
And he
What a-
finds a way. Oh
what a
my
game.
goodness.
So I'm guessing he just didn't have another reckless swing.
Yeah, there's no way. He went through all his cards. Like twice. Oh, what a game.
all right, so that was a pretty close game, especially I didn't really show the footage of it, but that game had been going on for about 20 minutes at one life, right? So this is something that as a seasoned Warrior player, I'm very, very aware of, is that you could pick up on your opponent's tendencies over the course of the game. So I've played against Jack hundreds of times at this point now, and I understand what type of tendencies he has as a player, and I understand how he likes to play that hero at a very, very deep level. Obviously, if I just met somebody, I can also pick up quite a bit as well, right? But the best time to make a big play or an exploitive play is at the very end of the game, because you get the most reward for it, and they're gonna be on the alert for any future tactics or shenanigans, right? Okay. I mentioned before that understanding your intended win condition and your opponent's intended win condition is really, really important. So how they interact in that game, the only possible way I could get a victory there would be to get him to 3 and play Nourishing Emptiness. There wasn't realistically another way to do it because I didn't have Dominate, I didn't have Iron Song Determination in my deck. So there was realistically only one path to victory, so I had to keep tempo until I got to that point. So if you go back and watch the full game, which is on the TheCardGuyz YouTube page, I go down to 1 health against 12 about 20-25 minutes before the end of the game, and I have to play from 1 health against my opponent for quite a bit of time. And yeah, so that's I understood what I had to do, and I had to keep tempo. I had to chip his life down a bit, and it was actually possible, given the deck sizes, I might have been able to win with decking him out, but I might have not been able to last that long. We'll see. I don't really know. Anyways, let's move on to the conclusion. Let's wrap this up. All right, so key takeaways for this episode number 10. Your endgame technique and tactical maneuvering will dictate your general success in Flesh and Blood. We talked about what the endgame is. We talked about why the endgame is so important. And we went over 2 examples that illustrated several important points and principles of the endgame. Again, my philosophy of the endgame can be summed up as respect all, fear none. Always play to win. Always look for the correct lines of play against your opponent, which is going to vary based on their skill level. Understand how your win condition interacts with your opponent's win condition. You incorporate all these things, I think you'll see much more success in the late game against a variety of opponents. Not only in CC, but in draft, sealed, blitz, etc. All right. So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Next episode, we're going to be taking a look at the RTN meta in general. And, you know, that's going to lead us up to Pro Tour 2, which I intend to go to. If you guys are going to PT2, you guys enjoy the content and all that, come up and say hi to me. I'm very friendly. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed episode number 10 of Fab 201. Thanks for joining me in the classroom. Have a good day. Take care. See ya.